A very warm welcome to you, and thank you so much for joining our Homeopathy 24/7 podcast. We are going to be speaking to an array of international guests who will share their knowledge and experiences of homeopathy with you. We will discuss all types of subjects such as remedies, symptoms, and stories of health. No matter where you are with your homeopathic journey, we aim to inspire you on your quest to natural health and living. The podcast is brought to you by Mary Greensmith, the founder of Homeopathy 24/7, which is a global platform connecting you with a homeopath wherever you are in the world, 24 hours a day. So let's get started with today's chat. Please welcome Mary Greensmith.
Hello and welcome to Homeopathy 24/7. Today it's just you and me. We are going to talk about homeopathy, and we're going to talk about all of the things that quite often we're talking about in the groups when we meet up, when you have got a particular issue you want help with. So these are the questions that we're most regularly asked when we're talking to mums prescribing homeopathy at home. As you know, during this podcast, we often invite other people in to discuss homeopathy, to find out exactly why they're using homeopathy. But today, we're just going to go through some of those questions that we're just asked all of the time. So let's start with collecting those symptoms. You know what it's like. Your child has got a cold coming on, and you know that your child, whenever they get a cold, it's going to start with a cough for them. So what else do we need to know? What symptoms do we need to collect in order to find the remedies that are going to be most helpful? So let's have a look, first of all, at acute prescribing. Let's have a look at the symptoms that we're going to be considering in order to find a remedy to start with, just for that cough that comes. All right. So what we want is when the cough happens and where it happens. So what time of day it happens most, and where are you at that time of day? So it might be worse when you're in bed. It might be worse when you go outside and the cold air gets you. It might be worse when you come back inside after being outside. It might be that your child or you or whoever the patient is gets a cold or a cough at a certain time of the year. So it is most important to make notes about this, and obviously keep a book for each patient that you're going to be looking after. So that might be each person in the family needs a section of the book, because it will be really useful for you to go back and look, when did he last have a cold and what did I prescribe for it? What worked and what didn't work? But for the symptoms, in order to find the remedy, we're going to need this information. So we're going to need what time of day it is, what time of day it's worse, but also what time of day it is the best. So the symptom doesn't occur after breakfast up until 4 o'clock. So we need to know that information, because that will determine between one remedy or another remedy. Now, we need to know what the cough sounds like. We need to know if it's one cough, two coughs, or three coughs for each section of cough. We need to know how deep the cough is. So we need to know if the cough is coming from the throat, the larynx, the chest, or where you can feel the depth of the cough. And we need to know if that changes, because obviously the symptoms of a cough do change and go from starting quite mild, and they might go to quite deep and more serious. We need to know what that sounds like. We need to know how much mucus is involved. We need to know if there's any sputum that comes up. And of course, every homeopath will always ask, what colour is the mucus? Anything that comes up, the colour is really, really important, because again, that will decide between particular remedies. So anything that's green or yellow could be the Cali B or pulsatilla for mucus sputum. Or white, thick might be Cali Mure, whereas clear might be Cali Bic. So we are using these particular questions to differentiate between certain remedies. Now, of course, when you look at the app or any of our ebooks or any information, if you've got a mini Materia Medica, a starting point to determine the difference between the remedies, then we're going to be looking at only a small section of that remedy picture. So each picture has a huge picture with lots and lots of information on it. But for acute prescribing, we often only give you a small portion of that information. So sometimes what I'm trying to say here is that the resource that you are looking at hasn't got all of the information, and you have to go and find another resource to find out a little bit more about the picture of that remedy. So when homeopaths are training to be homeopaths, they're given 10 books. And for every time they want to decide on a remedy, they really have to go through each of the 10 books to find the fullest picture so they get to know the remedy well. So you know that I've got an app called Homeopathy at Home that you can find at the App Store or Google Play, but it only has a small section of it. So it's a good starting point, but it's not the end result. You might need more resources. So the more you know about a remedy, the more questions that you're going to be wanting to ask. So there are questions. Let's go back to the cough, because we've talked about the time of day. We've talked about where the person might be, that it's that it's the worst, or that it's much better. And we've talked about if it recurs at certain times of the year. But what we also want to know is what else makes the cough better or worse. So is it worse after drinking or better after drinking? Is it worse after exercise? Is it worse lying down? Is it better after eating? Is it better after 5 o'clock in the evening? Does the cough suddenly get worse 2 hours after you've fallen asleep, and does it wake you up? Does the cough lead to choking? Does the cough bring on asthma symptoms? So all of these differentials, all of these details are what are going to be used to find the most appropriate remedy. So other things we need to ask are, what is happening as well as the cough? So are there other physical symptoms that are going on? Is the child really whingy and whiny and really needing you a lot? Are their eyes watering? Have they got lots of mucus in the nose? Is there a sinus blockage? What else is going on, and what else is happening at the same time? We need to take these into consideration to find that right remedy. So we've got what, where, and what else is happening. Now, the other thing we need to know is, how do you feel about this? How do you experience the symptom physically and emotionally? So how do you experience the symptom physically can mean, okay, let's listen to how the cough works. Let's tell me how that pain, where does it hurt? Are you clutching your chest when you're coughing? If you hold yourself, does that make it better for you? Or is there something else that you do whilst coughing? So physical symptoms. And now let's go over to the emotional symptoms. How do you feel about it? Does it make you angry? Does it make you irritable? Does it make you whingy? Does it make you needy? Your emotional reaction to a symptom is very, very important when it comes to looking at the remedies. And this is why we often have a look through details of remedies, and we are then deciding, okay, it's more this than this, and it could be this remedy and it could be this remedy, and I really can't decide between the two, so I need to know more about those two remedies. Let's look them up somewhere else. So when we go to what homeopaths call a materia medica, which is effectively a dictionary of all the remedies and all of the details that people have experienced that remedy has helped with, we will see a lot of the information isn't matching at all. But that's okay, because we just ignore that bit. And what we do is we take the amount of information that does match. And so if we have, let's say, 5 paragraphs, and we've got 3 sentences, that match really well. And in another remedy, we've got 10 paragraphs and we've got 5 sentences that match really well. Then we know that the second remedy is likely to be fitting the picture more. But what we do as well is we think, what is the most important symptom and what is the least important symptom? So the best remedy must have the most important symptom in there. So there are lots of ways we're going to be checking and double checking and triple checking the remedies and going through and finding the right one. But you can see that it's not just straightforward. We're not going to say, okay, you've got a cough, you need this remedy. And we're not going to say that remedy worked for you last time, so you definitely need this one. And it is so tempting to do that. But always, always, always double check in the book or the resource that you've got that the symptoms they are experiencing now match the symptoms that they're having right now. So let's talk about what happens when you've taken a symptom, when you've taken a remedy, because obviously homeopathy, it's not just stopping the symptom, it's not hiding it or masking it, it's not putting a bandage over it and hoping that it'll go away. The remedy is actually acting as a catalyst for the body, for the body's immunity. It's like kickstarting your own body and saying, no, look, act in this way. You've forgotten how to act responsibly. Here's a bit of a kick. Let's get you going again. So we're not trying to stop the symptom. We're going to move it on in order to heal. So we're not going to suppress it. We're not going to push it in. And we're not going to necessarily treat everything, because if the body's coping, then the remedy can't do any better. So quite often I'll get emails from my clients saying, oh, this is happening, what shall I give? And I'll say, well, how uncomfortable is it? Is it manageable? Can you stay with it? And they'll say, well, yeah, okay, it is manageable, I suppose. And I say, okay, do you feel that your body is coping with it? And they say, well, yes, it is. It's just irritating. I say, okay, if your body is doing what it should be doing and you are slowly progressing, then actually the only thing that homeopathy could do would be to speed up that process of moving it on. But if your body's already doing that and doing it well, then don't interfere. Because our whole idea and our whole goal is to get your body reacting in the way that it should be to help you heal. So when you are healing, we don't want to interfere. We don't want to change anything because your body's doing good. And we've got to remember sometimes to tell your body how good it's doing. And well done, body, because you're just on the right track and you're doing the right thing. But if you do need a remedy, what we're going to expect is the remedy will take you on to the next stage of the healing process. So it might mean that your symptoms change. So when you take a remedy, either nothing happens, nothing changes, or something changes and the symptoms that you had go away and stay away, or they go away and then they come back a few hours or a few days later, or the symptoms go away and new symptoms arise. So we have to know what to do in any of those eventualities. We have to know that this is what might happen. We have to understand that the remedy is going to change something. We don't necessarily want to keep giving the same remedies if the picture's changed. But we don't want to rush off and give new remedies if the body is coping with it. So all of the time we're assessing, is the body managing? Is the body healing? Is the body doing what it's supposed to be doing? If it needs a helping hand, then, and the symptoms have changed, then let's retake it. Let's add up all of those symptoms again. Let's find out what's happening now exactly. Let's go back to the books and let's change and find a new remedy that suits really well. If, however, the symptom gets better and then comes back again, then it might mean we need another dose of the remedy. And what I say is, with acute prescribing, you give that same potency 3 times, and if it's lasting longer each time, on the 4th time we give a higher potency. If it's lasting shorter time, then it's likely that we need to go on to a higher potency faster, or we might even need to change the remedy. So we'll be learning more about that as we go. So noticing what's happening and not being too quick to change the remedies is something that we all need to take into consideration. If there's any criticism at all, it's always that we change remedies too quickly. We don't stay with it. It would be quite normal to give 3 or 4 doses of each remedy before changing or going up in potency. So dosing is the number of times somebody has a remedy, and potency is the 12C, 30C, 200C, the strength. It's a bit weird about the strength because as it goes higher, it means it's more dilute. It doesn't necessarily mean it's stronger, but it means it's acting in a different way. So generally, let's just talk about potency for a moment, because generally, the lower the potency, the slower the acute issue might be. And the higher the potency, the more energy the acute symptom might have. So let's just think about a few examples. Toothache, excruciating pain, high. We want to go in perhaps at a 200. A wart, slow. You're not going to get more slow than a wart. So we might go in really low at 12C. For most acute situations, 30C is a great starting point. And if you've got a kit of 30C remedies, you are going to have something in there that is really useful. When you then expand your range, you might then choose some of the other potencies. If somebody falls and cracks their head, then they need a high potency because that's a really high energy thing. So I would suggest that everybody has an arnica in a 200 and an aconite as well. aconite for shock, of course, after any event that creates a shock reaction. Aconite, of course, has the symptoms that it comes on fast. So any fever that happens really quickly, any cold that comes on really quickly, aconite is a brilliant starting remedy. But that's what it is. Quite often, it is a starting remedy. It's not going to go right through the whole picture of the whole symptom complex, but it's a good place to start. And then what happens after giving the remedy is more symptoms emerge that give us a more broader picture, which enables us to find the next remedy that we need. Apis is another remedy that I think is a really brilliant remedy in 200C. Anybody that has any swelling on the faces, if you are subject to insect bites, allergies with swollen eyes and eyelids, swollen faces, Apis in a 200 really, really helps. Chamomilla is another one. Anybody with teeth pains or babies that are teething, or any pain that makes you cry out because it's so bad, Chamomilla 200 is a really, really useful remedy. And I suggest that everybody has that remedy in their first aid kit. So that explains a little bit about the potency for you. So generally we start lower and we move higher. We might consider a higher potency in the first instance with high energy activities or events that have occurred. And we might start with a really low potency if it's a slow thing that's happening. So it might be your bones are weak, your teeth are weak or decaying. It might be that you've got acne and it's slow. It's not just fast, high energy. Anything involving anger, pain, frustration, obviously is much higher energy. So you'll move up the potencies faster. Of course, the more homeopaths you speak to, the more we'll have variations of these things, because we don't always see it in exactly the same way, because homeopathy is a personalized medicine. And this means we take everything into consideration. We often want to listen to our clients talk because we can tell whether they're talking fast or slow. We can tell whether they're thinking fast or slow. And so all of these attributions, if you like, help us choose on not only the remedy, but also the potency and the dose. Anybody that becomes really anxious before an event, if they start being really loquacious and talking really quickly, it's much more high energy. So we'd go in with an Argentum nitricum 200 because they're high energy. But if they get really anxious, they go quiet, and you know something's wrong because they've gone quiet, we're much more likely to go to Gelsemium in a lower potency. So the way that you're expressing the symptoms will decide not only on the remedy, but also on the potency. And certain remedies will work very differently at a low potency and are much more, it just seem to be slower remedies, really. And other remedies are more high energy remedies. I hope that's making sense. There's so much to talk about with potency and dose. We'll be talking about it forever. But these are the main essences that I just want to have this conversation with you, because it's something that I'm always discussing with my clients as they're learning more about the remedies that they're going to be using at home. So we've talked about what to expect when we've taken a remedy, and we've talked about if the symptoms change, we might need to repeat the remedy. We might need to go up in potency. We might need to stop the remedy altogether, and we might need to change the remedy. So let's just go through that again. If the symptom goes away and then comes back again, we repeat the remedy. If then it goes away and comes back after a longer period of time, we repeat the remedy again. If it comes back after a shorter period of time, we go up in potency. But after 3 doses anyway, if the remedy is still working and still making the symptom go away, we'll go up in potency. If the symptom goes away and a new symptom arises, we need to go back to the books. We need to have a look again at all of the new symptoms, and we need to reevaluate and find a new remedy that suits. But first of all, we need to act, well, how do you feel about that? How agitated are you? Can your body cope? Is it heading in the right direction? Or do you need something to stimulate this to move on faster? Let's talk about fevers for a moment, because we always are answering the question, well, when should I give belladonna? Because I don't want to suppress the symptom, the fever. So your body has a fever in order to raise your body's temperature, in order to kill viruses and bacteria. So if we suppress that fever too quickly, we're not allowing the body temperature to rise and for the body to heal as it is made to do. So we're always considering what is a safe point and what isn't. And I'm not going to answer that question now, because it will depend on you or your child or your patient. How do they experience the fever? What is uncomfortable for them? When we get too uncomfortable, we don't want our patients to suffer, so we give the remedy. So what about other remedies suppressing the symptom? Or if a remedy has the result in a change of the symptom, a new symptom arises, then do we automatically give another remedy? Or do we think about it, well, actually, that is something that might need to come out? Let me give you an example of this. Let me tell you a little story. When I was training, very early on, in fact, it was probably after the second week, I decided in my wisdom to give my husband a calc carb. I thought this really is a good remedy. You really are going to, it's really going to help you. He had a wart on his finger and it just suited him just fine. He's had this wart on his finger for over 2 years. And so I gave him 1 calc carb 30, and he came out in a rash, and the rash was around his wrist, and it was really quite itchy for him. He doesn't really suffer with skin itches and rashes, and he was quite upset about it and said, what have you done to me? What are you learning here? Obviously, what's going on? And I said, oh, that's interesting, because you will notice that homeopaths, of course, don't have aggravations, because any change in the symptom is really, really useful information, and it often leads to the next remedy that you're going to need. So I thought, oh, this is interesting. What's happening here? What's coming out? And unfortunately for my husband, it was great for me because it was a really good learning case. But the rash spread, and it spread down his tummy, around his neck, around the back of his neck. And after a few days, he was quite, he wasn't really, but after a few days, the itching stopped and it just, looked, woo. So I said, okay, look, this is really quite significant rash now. When did you last have a rash? When did it last happen? And he said, no, I've never had a rash. No, I've never had any problems like this. I'm not allergic to anything. And I said, no, something's coming out. That remedy has really stimulated something to come out. And he said, no, definitely not. So I got on the phone to his mum. And she said, oh, well, he did have scarlet fever when he was a child. He was quite ill with it. Yes, we did have to go to the doctor. I can't remember what he had for it, but obviously he had medicines from it. So that gave me so much information that I realised that actually this rash was coming out from many, many years previously, a rash that had been suppressed with medication. So whilst some people might think you have a remedy and you have an aggravation, there's usually a reason for it. And that will depend on your sensitivity. I wouldn't have said my husband was particularly sensitive. And so I wasn't really so worried. But I didn't realise that it was something that needed to come out, that had been suppressed before. And luckily, I was able to get that background information and confirm that that's what happened. So the good thing is, after a week, the rash went down and the wart fell off. But the really good news was that his cat allergy that he'd had for many, many years just disappeared. And suddenly we can go into people's houses that had cats, and he wasn't going to spend the whole night sneezing, because it had got to the stage where he actually refused to go if they had a cat in the house. So we can see that the suppression of the scarlet fever as a child had created a change in his immunity, and that was all knocked back into place with one dose of calc carb. He didn't need it again, but it is usually the first remedy that you'll consider with anything new that comes up, because it just suits him and his personality so well. So we learn so much by watching, by noticing, by writing down and keeping notes. So I hope this is useful for you when you're considering the remedies that might be useful for your family, and the potency and dose that would be more appropriate. Please do write in and let me know your questions and other things that would be really useful for you to learn in your homeopathic journey, because that's what we're here for. That's why we're helping you. That's because homeopathy is such a magnificent medicine that so many people need to know about. And the more people that use it, the more people will get to know that they have got a choice in medicine. Look forward to speaking to you soon. Take care. I hope you found this information useful for you today. I hope you can take away some really important aspects of it. You've written some good notes down so that you're a little bit clearer about potency and dose. Next week, I'm going to be joined by Alex Mello, who is going to talk about the science of homeopathy. She is a scientist turned homeopath and is so interesting, and will talk to us just about where she's come from, but also where she thinks homeopathy is going to go, and where, of course, homeopathy fits into the scientific world. It's going to be such an interesting chat. I look forward to seeing you there.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode and look forward to listening to our next one. Please don't forget to follow our podcast on your chosen channel, and please do leave us a review so we can continue to share homeopathy with as many people as possible. If you do have any questions, please do reach out to us on any of our social platforms mentioned in the show notes. We at Homeopathy 24/7 hope to empower you on your natural health journey.